Okay, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for another Tabletop Table Talk. Blah, blah, blah. Hi, I'm Gabe. You might know me as GabeJamesGames on Twitch, Twitter, pretty much anywhere else. Um, I am a game designer, cosplayer, voice actor. I do a plethora of other things, and today I am your host. And for the foreseen future of Tabletop Table Talk, where my goal is essentially just to help you be more comfortable being a GM, telling stories, figuring out different new and creative ways to tell stories, and to have fun doing it. We have a severe lacking of GMs that exist, and the hope is to change that. Um, Web captioner. Also, so we have two options. We have option A, which is what we've usually done, but I actually made my camera significantly bigger to make it a little bit more comfortable, as well as I made the captions bigger, which I think are on this side. Nope, wrong. They're on this side. So it's more filling up, engulfing the screen because that was the main focus. I also have ba 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 this one. I didn't hit the button. Nailed it. So this one, I have my character Savarnis, who is one of my werewolves, and then I have my character Vidrux, who is my character in Rhyme of the Frostmaiden that I play on Mondays with the rest of the Roll20 crew. That is done by Rachel Denton at Tallianier, TALLINIER on Twitter and I think Instagram as well. She did the work for the class modifier module as well. And this one is just more of a center frame with the captions at the bottom. I don't know if there's a preference. This one just felt easier to me because of the center frame, and then I just put my characters on the side because I didn't want it to just be empty space, if that makes sense. Yes, and thank you for putting her Twitter in the chat, Salty Ginger. Um, yeah, today I wanted to talk about. Okay, so the game is set up. Now what? If you have watched any of the other episodes, we have talked about scope, we have talked about world building, we have talked about setting the tone for your game. We have talked about we talked about a lot. We even talked about GMless games and we talked about burnout. So we have all of this stuff set up. We have all of this stuff prepared. We have this story that we are ready to tell. We have this story that we are ready to run through and enjoy. And then honestly, the question is now what? It's a lot. Um, Before I jump into that, uh, because I am also hydrate a proper host and genuinely appreciative. A big thank you to Roll20 for giving the chance to talk about these things. Hopefully, you got experience and watch some of Roll20Con that happened this past weekend. I had a tabletop table talk that I did with two of the members of the Roll20 staff to learn about how to use dynamic lighting. And like full honesty and full disclosure, I had literally no idea what I was doing going into it. So the fact that I learned how to use it and knew what I was doing after an hour, I feel like is a testament to good design and functionality. At number two, Roll20 is still raising money for Code 2040, which is trying to enthuse and support Black and Latinx in the technology industry, and they are matching up to $50,000. So if we can raise some money during this stream, it would literally make even a world of a difference for people that are trying to get involved, and that's especially close to me because getting involved in the technology field, there was a lot of stuff that I wouldn't be doing now if I hadn't been given the opportunity. And now that I had it, I've been able to roll with it, and no pun intended. And it's part of why I'm where I am now. But it's all about opportunity sometimes, and sadly, we don't have enough of that. So thank you to Roll20. If you get a chance, please donate to Code 2040. We will be doing some more donation and fundraising stuff in the future because if we can push this, no, if we can push this donation goal past the goal that we have, I have some strangely chaotic things that I want to share soon. Um, yeah, exactly. Also, if you have a question that pops up during the stream or just anything you want to ask, if you put question in all caps, one of the mods will grab that question and we'll do a little bit of a Q&A either halfway through towards the end. If you're watching on Twitch right now, thank you for coming to join me. If you're watching on YouTube later, thank you for at least watching and commenting. And I do read the comments and I appreciate the feedback that I've been getting because it also inspires me. Okay, that is my spiel. Now we can talk about game things. So the game is set up. Now what? You have all of this world that you've been building. You have all these character ideas. You have this content you've been figuring out. You have this tone set up for what the players want to do. You have this idea in your head, and now you're executing it. Oh my gosh, there's so much and also so little at the same time because every GM is a little different. And sometimes we pull ideas from other stuff, but it doesn't always work. So one of the biggest things is pace for me. Also, I realized I had to make that clear. Put the word question in all caps, but we will still take that one. So, hi Dicey. Yeah, so pace. How do you figure out the pace of what the story is going to be? I feel like if you can talk about that early on with the tone of what you're setting, that helps. But sometimes the pace of the game changes. They might fight the big bad and win, and then you don't know what happens after that. You have to figure out the pace of how fast you want this story to go or how slow. Maybe they're getting close to the big boss fight, but it's a stream show and you still have 3 episodes left. So you have to change the pace a little bit and bring them back around to kind of center them to where you need them to be so that it follows that speed. They might have been going way slower and aren't going to get to that finale at the time you were aiming for. And so you have to corral them and almost railroad, but in a guiding way to get them to where you want them to be. So figuring out the pace after you have this game set up while you're running it is a big deal. Ad-libbing, and it's part of a question that I'm going to go into later, is something that I do all the time because I guess I've never really talked about my personal style of GMing. I like to write intense, deep, heavy lore-involved worlds. And I only do it about 1/5 of the time. I do it in like big games that I have planned or have streamed or something. But when it comes to one-shots, I actually don't write very much. I'll write maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs. And if I do write a bunch of content or ideas, I'm really only writing answers. No, I say I'm only really writing answers because there's a lot of stuff that your party will ask you. They'll ask, what is the name of this creature? What is the name of this deity? Where is this place located? So I want to have answers to their questions when they come up. But I personally, I don't want to have all of the answers. And this is where like the group narrative world building stuff comes up and makes a difference. That was weird. Okay, well my lights just flashed. I apologize for that. That was why I paused. But yes, I don't want to have all of the answers. I want my party to help come up with some of the answers for that. I might have an idea of what the town looks like and maybe 2 or 3 specific shops or things that are inside of it. But then I like having that group world building process to get an idea of what they want to see in it. So I'll go into details at first. And then I'll stop. And I'll have to ad-lib some of the questions that they have, like they want to have answers to. But I don't want to have all the answers. Especially because there's going to be things that I never consider, things that I never would have expected. And if I don't have an end goal and it's just a long campaign, sometimes it's nice to let them set the pace. if for 3 or 4 sessions they literally just want to run around and explore why this baker is the most infamous baker in this town because that was something one of the party wanted, I'm here for it. Let's see. Let's discover why this baker is so popular and famous. But if there is an impending doom happening, I might make the baker lead them in a direction. I might make the baker mention something offhanded. I might make the baker send them to do something for them. And then it leads them back on the trail that I was hoping them to reach. There's no single way to run the story or run the game. And we'll see a bunch of people do it in different ways because GM styles are different. And sometimes they're similar, but there's still differences in the similarities. So again, whenever I do one-shots, especially like for charity games or play testing or things like that, I'll have maybe a beginning and an end. And honestly, I don't really have anything in the middle. I might have, they start in this house and they'll end at this mountain peak. And in between, there's a person who mentions the mountain peak. And that might be the entirety of what I have. And I'm not even saying that that's the way you should do it, because coming up with those things spontaneously can sometimes be hard, which is oftentimes why I like leaving it to my party whenever they come up with ideas. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't GM'd in a while. And one of the things, well, that's not true. I GM one-shots pretty often. I haven't GM'd a long campaign in a while. And this show has honestly been reminding me why I love doing it so much. And it's probably a big reason as to why I'm planning to get back into the long-term GM seat pretty soon. I made a post about that. And thinking of like the middle ground. If you get lost or confused in your own story after the game is set up and they're exploring the world, that's also okay. One of the things I really want to emphasize, because we haven't talked about it much on this show, is that if you're not sure what to happen next in the story, that does not mean that you are failing. If you're not sure what next your party should do, that does not mean that you have done something wrong. If you're not sure where the story is going to progress to after something happens, you are not at fault. And communication and talking to your party is good. Like if you're literally like, y'all, you were actually, I planned for this, but then this happened. So like, what do you all want to happen? And you're probably going to get some wild, ridiculous, strange, interesting, unique answers. And they might make the game significantly more than you were ever expecting. I talk about communication a lot. Communication is very important to me. And communicating, there's been times when I had a long-term campaign and I had no idea what I wanted to do because they had just killed the big bad significantly sooner than I ever expected to because of like a chance and roll of the dice. Hello, Malavich. My words are English. Words are hard. But they had killed the big bad significantly before I ever expected them to. And we still had, I think, like 4 sessions left in the streamed game. Got it. Thank you. And literally, I literally just sat down and asked them, question. You killed the big bad that I wasn't expecting until the final fight. Is there anything else that you all want to do in this story? And someone brought up, well, actually, I'd like to look into the backstory of how they ended up that way. Perfect. Got it. Easy. And I just started typing up notes and ideas of what I wanted to happen and what could happen and possibilities for it. And all it took was me just asking if there was anything they wanted to do. And only one member of the party actually had an idea of what they wanted. Everyone else was like, I'm not sure. I just kind of want to run around and fight things. And I'm like, that's fine. I can do that. But then they gave me an idea. But something we're gonna circle around. One of the other hard things to deal with is your game is set up. You run through this story. They have the conclusion. And then it ends. Now what? Do you continue in this world? Do you start something entirely new? Do you continue with this group? It's a common question, especially when you have like short-term games. And I also don't think that's very often talked about. You might have had the same group that you've been playing with for months and months and months, and then the game ends, and now, like, it took all that time to get set up and get the characters together and get this world together and run through this world, and you discovered all these things about this world and all of these characters. Now it happens. Two prime examples. One is the Adventure Zone. In the Adventure Zone, you had the Balance arc, and we got to meet all of these different characters. And in the new Adventure Zone arc, from what I remember, it's an entirely new like world. It's entirely different. And there's still like some similarities because they're playing the same system, but it's different. Versus Critical Role. You have Critical Role and they're playing in the same world, just at a later time. It was a choice they made because they wanted to stay inside of this universe they'd built together, this universe they'd invested in, but they wanted to play it in a different time than they were in the first campaign. And I wrote a whole bunch of notes about this topic because this is something that even I I'm unsure. So that's the hard question though, right? We're talking about like creating the session. We've talked about creating the story, the experience and all of that. And then after you get it going, after you start telling these stories, after you start playing with this group that you enjoy, what do you do after the big resolution in the story? What happens after you beat the big bad, after you solve the mystery, after you save the city, the town, the world? So I'm asking all of you, what has been something that's happened? And it could be something that happened in game, if you kept playing in that world. It could be something that happened outside of the game. But what was the following moment? What was the following event? What was the following progression after you beat the conflict? After you came to the resolution? What followed? Did you keep playing in that world or did you try something else? Did you create a whole new world? Did you try a new system? Did you just keep the world and change characters? What did you do? Myself, I don't think I've ever had the chance to play in a world that I'd been in before after beating the big bad. Every time a campaign has ended, it's been a new one. And that's not a bad thing either. But it's just something I've never thought about until this moment. There have been times when I just switched systems. We have gone from Dungeons and Dragons to what was the next one? We played a D&D campaign, and then we played a Star Wars role-playing game campaign. It was a shorter one. And then we went back to D&D. So we took like a little break in between, which was also nice. And there's different variety and reasons that people do it. And it's always good. So Salty Ginger, I've run the same world, but with different players usually. So new threats based on what history their characters bring in. That's cool. You know what? Actually, I have played in a world where there were other players previously, and it was during a Halloween game. This past year, I played in a Halloween game where the year before, players had also run through like a gauntlet kind of tricky haunted theme. And the end resolution of that affected the game that I was in for the one shot. And there was that couldn't happen because of like conflictions and schedules and such. But there was actually going to be another game that was this year. And in a way, I guess my Lost Mine, my Rime of the Frost Maiden character, the one there? I think so. Yes. Yes. So he's inspired. So the idea of his character is that he's the child of another character that I had. I had a character named Vicaris, who was a dragonborn paladin of Tiamat. Wow, I am impressed and shocked that the web captioner got that right. I mean, his name was not. His name is Vicaris, not Cameras. But it was a way of fusing the worlds together and bringing them together. And that's the kind of stuff that I love. So Death, Dice, and Dungeons, I've been running the same one-shot dungeon for 16 years. A living dungeon, 164 dead PCs, and you have a chance to stumble upon those bodies in the game. That's terrifying and really freaking cool. I'm a big fan. Okay, so I went off a little bit. So what goes into that? You've beaten the big bad. You've had this resolution. So the biggest question, I feel like, is, do you want to keep playing? The reason I bring this up as the biggest question is because you might have been playing through a campaign you didn't necessarily love, enjoy, feel the same level of investment in. And that can happen. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad player. It doesn't mean that you're a bad GM. It doesn't mean that you're a bad storyteller. It could just be that the group wasn't your ideal group. It could be the story wasn't the story that you really wanted to be involved in. And it could be that it was more work than you wanted to. And that's hard. There's been plenty of times when I've run games for people. I ran a 3-session game just as a way to gauge the way I liked it. And the story that I had, I was very invested in and I really liked. And it just turned out it wasn't ideal for the group of like players that I had. And they're all very talented and impressive and they can role play very well. But I hadn't myself properly explained the tone that I was reaching for, and then getting a gauge of the tone that the players were comfortable with. I was looking more for a nitty-gritty story, and the party that I had was primarily more about like the sandboxy, comedic comic relief sort of encounter and adventure. And that's entirely valid. That's totally fair. And I just hadn't had that conversation ahead of time. And then when we had it around the second session, I think, in between the second and the third, it was like, okay, well, this is more what I was going for. And some of them were like, okay, sure. Some were like, it's not really my thing. And I enjoyed the story, but then I realized that it might not be the story to tell with the group that I had. And in that circumstance, we didn't keep playing, and we still talk and we play other games together, but we just didn't keep playing in that world. We didn't keep playing that story. And I had to ask, do I want to keep playing, or is it going to be almost like a work sort of aspect, something that is required rather than you're allowed to do? You're allowed to tell the story versus you have to tell the story. Phew. What else? So, another recommendation, after this game is set up, after it comes through, after you have your resolution, consider, is this the game system that you want to keep playing? So if the answer has consistently been a yes, that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. If there's something that you're all comfortable with and happy using, then that is something I am personally happy to hear. If the answer is yes, but you also want a break, then that's still fantastic. And what I want to do is offer you a few options. I love playing in the D&D universe. I like using the system. I'm familiar with it. I know how 5e works. And I'm always learning something new about how it works. And I want to keep learning how it works, to be honest, as it evolves, as it changes, as we create more and more things. Sometimes I've played D&D every week for 2-3 months, and it's the only game that I've played. And I just want to play something else because I want to play in a different world. I'm going to play Tales from the Loop and be a chaotic kid. I want to play the Star Wars RPG and have the Force and use whatever I have at my will. I want to play the Dragon Age RPG because I love fantasy, but you know what? I want to hang out with a Kunari. And it's just having that option to change and be flexible. Because if you're telling the story with this group, you might be burned out from telling the story in this world. And you just need a break. And we talked about burnout before as well. Or your party might just want to try something different after the resolution. Because they need time to figure out maybe what they want to do. Which is why people run like one-shots in between. My Dragon Age group that I play with on Thursdays is actually on break because the season just ended. And there might be things that happen in between. There might be other things that we do. We might even do a couple, not one-shots, but like short campaign kind of things in between. Just to give us that little bit of a break. And then we can come back to it excited and invigorated and ready. So with the different options, number one, it could be, if you want to keep using the same system after beating this boss, that you just step out of the GM seat and let someone else take over. It could still be using the same system. And then instead, if you're just a member of the party, you keep playing, and the GM may relate to some of the other stuff that I mentioned in the following. Number two, you might still want to be the GM and maybe still want to use the system in the long term, but you just need a little break from it. So you play a couple of sessions of another system and just let someone else fill in for a couple sessions and then come back. That's in a way what we did with my Monday crew. On Mondays, we were playing Lost Mind of Phandelver. And it was originally Dave the Human that was in the GM seat. And we actually just switched, and Distracted Elf is now in the DM seat. And it's been fantastic. And we got to see a whole different side. Dave was clever and coy and witty, but added in comedic humor. And Elf is smart and sly. And brings in like that little beautiful aspect of like horror tones and fear. But it's subtle. Honestly, that's part of why I haven't GM'd in like a long-term campaign in a while. There were times when I would be the only one doing it and, bump my computer. And I just wanted a break. I wanted time to sit and relax. And I'm literally talking about it now. It's been the point where I've gone through a campaign. I've beaten the big bad in a couple situations as a player, as a party member. And now, Gabe, I am ready to jump back into that GM seat. I'm ready to be back after taking essentially that break that I wanted to take. And like with D&D, there are dozens of modules and worlds you can run. So I asked it before, but I still ask again. After you beat the big boss, after you beat the big bad, whether it's from a GM point of view or a player point of view, what do you want to happen next? Do you usually want to keep playing in that world? Do you usually want to keep building on that character, or do you want a character that relates to that character? Or do you want a character that's just completely unrelated, but it's a new experience? It's something new. It's something fun. It's something fresh. The game is set up. You ran through, and you beat the big bad. Now what? I've only gone through one adventure module the whole way. And I say the whole way because I came into Lost Mine late. So I didn't go through the entire thing of it. Hey, Ogre. And we actually didn't, that was when we switched to the Star Wars system. So something to think about. Something to consider. Because we talked world building the other day. If you build up this world, if you add in so much to it, if you have all of these details, all of these characters, and you still want to delve into it, then there's literally no shame and no flaw in keeping working in that world. I try to avoid the Matt Mercer comparison because at the end of the day, he really is a person who's passionate about what he's doing, and he's just a guy. Like, he's just a person. But he puts in a lot of detail into his world that if the party hasn't experienced it already, it gives it an even better reason for them to explore it in different areas and different characters and new regions and new worlds. So they've been exploring an entirely different continent, and it's been fantastic, and we get to see so many new people. So, Salty Ginger, whenever I do get through the whole campaign, my players usually do want to keep playing their characters, so I'll find another module, but not right away. And that makes sense. That's exactly the kind of stuff that I would like to see, because I feel like that's also what makes a long campaign. Giving them that investment. It doesn't have to be you switch modules. There are people who've been playing the same characters for literally 4 or 5 years. And that absolutely astounds me. There are people who have, even if they switch systems as a break, they still play the same character. And they just recreate their character in the other system and then bring it back in the future. I know someone who has made, what system was that? They were playing a vampire in Pathfinder, and then they made a vampire in Vampire the Masquerade that was literally that character. I guess essentially I did that. My character over here I built him as a character for Dungeons and Dragons, and then I played him in the Werewolf game, actually, that I have going on right now in a more modern term. And then I'm going to keep using him in my D&D game. I'm going to keep using him in the session in the world to build it up. But, yeah. So I have a couple different sections about what I want to talk about today. Especially when you have the game set up, because there are so many things that you can do when the game is set up, when the game is ready, when the game is running, when you're playing in the middle of it. But if you have any questions, I would love to hear anything you have now. Again, put the word question in all caps in your question to follow. We'll go through some of the questions now. And honestly, every time we've done the question thing, there have been questions that led into one of the next topics I wanted to talk about. So that's part of why I'm asking now, so I can get a gauge of that and lead into it. So Commander Pulsar said, it's always such a tough decision for me, because as much as I enjoy a campaign, I have so many games I want to play and run and try. I have a list of 20 games I'm writing notes for. Yes, absolutely understand that. It has actually, I've started writing notes for ideas and stories that I have without a system in mind, for that same reason. I'm gonna move my mic closer. I've literally started writing all of my notes system agnostic, because I don't know if I want to run them in D&D, in Pathfinder, in Starfinder, in Ironsworn, in Dragon Age, in a game idea that I have myself. I made a post recently saying I wanted to run a game where characters were essentially immortal. They would die and come back. And there's a bunch of different systems that it could work for, because I could just twist the rules a little bit if I wanted to. I could add in my own rule if I wanted to. And it's so hard to decide what system I want to do it in, because there's so many games that I want to try. Getting to play Werewolf for the first time, it opened up a whole new world of possibilities of how I wanted to play. And I've played Powered by the Apocalypse games. I've played a few of them, actually. But when I got to play Werewolf, it was a whole different experience, because some of the Powered by the Powered by the Apocalypse system stuff, the gameplay was similar enough that I could pick up the Werewolf stuff. I felt like, yeah. But even still, Werewolf was a different circumstance, because the world was different, the skills were different. It was a whole new experience. There was Gnosis and Rage and other things that added to it. And I'm like, they're mechanics I never thought of, or they were mechanics that I have thought of just in a general purpose for wanting to do a game with werewolves, but I didn't even think of how they would relate to this. I love this stuff. And it's really, it's hard. It's part of, like, even right now, I'm fumbling a little bit over my words. Because now what is such an open-ended and hard to answer question. And that's intentionally why I picked this title. Because I've said it before that this show is way more of a conversation than just me talking at you. Me telling you what is or isn't happening. Me telling you what is or isn't working. I don't want that, because that's not fun or interesting. It's having the real conversation of struggling to figure out what to do after your game is set up. And let's say that you have everything set up and you're halfway through your campaign and something goes entirely wrong. And what is the right choice? The party was meant to, let's say, befriend a creature. And the creature dies. By this point, I feel like you've probably gotten a gauge and tone for your party. You probably have an idea of what they like doing. If they want you to be lenient or if they want you to be harsh. If they want you to be shocking or if they want you to be guiding them to ideas and realizations that might feel predictable at first, but sometimes predictable outcomes are really satisfying when you prove someone right. So let's say that they killed this creature that was going to ally with them and lead them to something that they needed. What's the right choice? I would argue that there, for most creative things like this, isn't a single right choice. You can be creative. You can give them whole new options. You can just make up an NPC. And if the improv isn't good for you, if having it planned so they can follow a clear, concise progression is what you need, backup plans. 1, 2, maybe 3 backup plans for how to progress somewhere if things go entirely out of a way you expected. So before I said that I have answers when I'm coming up with ideas for what the world is going to be like. I'll have answers for what kind of creature is there, but I don't know if it's going to attack the party or not. I might have answers for there is a bandit inside of this house, but maybe there's a bunch of items inside of the house and the players are suspicious about what the bandit actually stole. So having the answers and guidelines, it's like having responses. And backup plans can just be responses to actions that they do. So if they destroy an idea that you had previously, one of the trickiest things that you can do, but also most clever, never even let them know. They have, unless you want to tell them, and you could even tell them 1 session, 2 sessions, 5 sessions later, that something was entirely improv, that something was entirely made up, or you never actually have to tell them. You might want to tell them just because you're really proud of it or it's impressive, but it's something they never actually have to know unless you want them to. Let them, in a way, solve the problems for you that you have. They killed the creature, and they find out that the creature was actually going to guide them to the place. So maybe they figure out a way to revive the creature. Maybe they figure out someone else that also knew of it. Maybe they figure out that the creature actually had a map to this thing. And as they're coming up with ideas, maybe you're making suggestions, if they come up with one you like, latch on to it. Hold on to that and use that. Bring that in. Spin that into the story. So Commander Pulsar said again, absolutely, I feel like playing lots of different games stretches my game design muscles and my GM skills. Building your own building your own kit of GM tools from parts of other things. I'm always selling mechanics from one game or another. And honestly, that's part of what makes your games good. It's part of what's going to make them fun and interesting. And it's why we all play differently, because we're all pulling different things and different stories and different ideas. And it just comes together and it's fantastic. I'm glad you tuned in. I hope you feel like you're getting, so that's, yes, feeling like you get something out of this is the most important thing. So let's say that your game is set up and you start going into the story. And you start to realize pretty quickly that the party just isn't latching on to the story. They're having fun in this world, but they're not so much latched on to this story. So I'm going to offer 2 suggestions. And one of them is my reoccurring common idea of just direct communication. You can ask if there's a kind of adventure they want to have. It's like, okay, you know what? We are playing through Curse of Strahd, but you love the world of Barovia. You actually just don't want to fight Strahd. Maybe they just want to be monster hunters in this world because you realize they've hunted 3 different monstrous creatures, abominations, and they loved it. They absolutely adored it. And the idea of Strahd is just unappealing. It's interesting, but it's not latching on. So literally just, if you feel comfortable, straight up ask. Literally ask, do you actually want to play through the specific of this module, or do you just like this world and we can figure out something else? And 9 times out of 10, I feel like your party will respond to you earnestly and honestly. And if you have to ask them privately to confirm it, then you can do that. If asking them all at once is the ideal, do that. Honestly, maybe even do both. Ask them all at once and then double check with everyone privately, just in case they weren't comfortable in the group setting. I love Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And I know there's like kind of a basis of a story, but I just love pirate ships. I love pirate ships. I love boats. I love the sea. I love sea creatures. I love skeleton pirates. I love that stuff. And I didn't want to play just a single story that was related to it. I just wanted to just dive into it. I wanted to dive into the world itself. And the thing is, I didn't realize that at first. I thought that I was going to get involved in the story and be latched on and never want to let go. And I played a couple sessions and I was like, this is interesting. This is okay. Nah, I'm good. And it wasn't because like there was any lack of storytelling or any excitement. It was realizing it just wasn't what I wanted. And sometimes you realize that afterwards too. You won't always realize the route that you want to go, the direction you want to flow at the very beginning. You might realize that after you've been playing a few sessions, because you don't always... It's like not knowing if you're going to like the flavor of something before you taste it. There are sometimes times when you don't want to taste it at all. Totally fine. You might also have a feeling, I don't know if I'm going to like this fruit. I don't know if I'm going to like this candy. And you taste it, and you're looking at it, and you know, okay, so this candy looks delicious. It's like ruby red. It says that it's strawberry flavored. Delicious. You taste it, and it's disgusting. And you spit it out, and you hate it. Or you eat the candy, and you're like, it's okay. I'd actually rather just eat real fruit, but it's okay. Or you're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to like it. You eat it, and it's delicious. Sometimes when you're playing games, you don't know if you really enjoy the concept you jumped into until you've been in it for a while, until you've experienced it, until you've had time to process the flavor of it. So Blair Brooks, this is happening in my running of Princes of Apocalypse right now. Oh my gosh, those weird jelly beans. Bean Boozled terrifies me. I have feelings about that game. The characters don't seem to care about stopping these cultists. I'm trying to make this situation more dire by having the cultists targeting them directly or more innocent, see if that works. So Blair, I would like to make a suggestion to you, because I have had moments with this. So yeah, you know what? The game is set up. The cultists are doing this thing. The players don't care. Now what? Characters are uninterested. So yes, let me give you this suggestion, if I may then. Make the world keep spinning even if the characters aren't acting on it. I'll elaborate. You have this event where you want the characters to stop this monster that is going to be revived. And it doesn't have to be the big bad, but it could be a gigantic snake serpent-like creature that if revived, it's going to cause Cavis. Oh my gosh. Chaos, havoc. Lord. Ooh, I felt my brain break just then. Okay. So you have this serpent-like creature that's going to cause chaos and havoc. Havoc and chaos, yeah. But so you have 3 long rests, 3 days, 3 situations where if they don't get to it, this thing is going to be revived. And you don't even have to give them a time. You can literally just tell them by hinting that it's going to be soon, right? And if they get to a point where they realize that there are consequences, and I don't mean consequences in a way of like, if you don't do this, you'll die. I mean consequences of making the world living, making the world real. So if they don't get to this area before this creature is revived, now this creature exists. Now this creature is real. It is going through this world. It is causing havos and chaos. It is destroying villages. It is attacking people. And it's like indirect responsibility. They were not obligated to stop these people. They were not obligated to stop this event. But because they didn't stop it, this thing is roaming free. And it doesn't even always have to be that big of a scale every time. It could literally be that the cultists you have these cultists, and maybe they don't, maybe the characters don't go to help this village. They don't go to help this town. They don't go to see what's happening. So the cultists take everything. They take all of the food that the villagers have. Maybe the cultists attack a village and a bunch of people were injured because no one showed up to help. And the party goes there thinking that like everything might be okay or relatively fine. But it might not be that the party needs themselves to be affected. I think if you have the characters around the world, if you have this world affected, if they walk into a town or a village or a place that has been affected by all of this frustration and like decimation, it's not so much repercussions for their actions, but it's the reality of that this world does exist without them doing anything. That is one of my favorite things to do. There's a lot of stuff in the chat and I'm going to read it, and I'm on my wind now. I love setting up like timers. And not timers that the world will die if they don't do this thing, or that they will never achieve anything if they don't do this. Also, yes, I support bumbling demon siblings Havos and Chaos. But even if a small thing happens once, like they were going to go shop at this town, and imagine if they left this town and then came back to a shop and the shopkeeper was killed. Or even before, the shopkeeper's like, you know what? I heard there might be more cultists coming around these parts. And if the characters are like, oh yeah, that's wild, just be careful, and they leave, and then they come back and the shopkeep is dead, could they have saved them? Could they have done something? Or maybe the shopkeep is not even dead, the shopkeep is just kidnapped. So there's still a chance that they can help them. There's still a chance they can save them. There's still a chance that they can be involved. It's that butterfly effect. And then they go and rescue this person. And maybe at that point, that's when they hear that this serpentine creature is about to be released or revived. And then there's the question of, well, we didn't come back the first time. If we don't go stop this thing the second time, is the serpent going to get out? And you keep building it up more and more and more if you want to. And honestly, that could be a perfect driving factor. Because maybe the characters aren't even going to be the heroes in this story. Maybe they're just trying to survive. They're just trying to make it through the day. They're just trying to make it. I love that stuff. I love making the world living and having it go on and progress even when they don't do anything. If they go to this place within the first week of adventuring, they're going to find this amazing sword. If they don't go to this place within the first week, someone else is going to find that amazing sword. And then everything might go to hell. And it's not really so much punishing, because it should never be a punishment for them playing in a particular way. You can reward them for playing in particular ways, but don't punish them. If they want to spend that time running around the towns and not helping the cultists, maybe they will. Not fighting against the cultists, then maybe the world itself is what suffers. And if they stop them, then they're rewarded by companionships and alliances and gifts and involvement in a world that's living. Then it's not just the game, it's the experience. I'm really passionate about that stuff. I love that so much. My first sheet is to look at the character sheets. They've chosen skills and abilities, aspects to do things they want to do. What are these characters good at? Give them that. Absolutely, Commander Pulsar. Give them the moments to shine. If you have a character that is extremely good at pickpocketing and you know what? I'm going to keep using this circumstance because we've already started talking about this conversation. The cultists are in this world, and you know a character is extremely good at pickpocketing. And as a GM, something that I might do is I say, actually, Noah, you notice that it looks like a mark might have just walked in. They look relatively well off, actually. Bring that attention to them. And then, you know what? When Noah goes to pick their pocket, even if it's not a perfect success, give them something. Or do it this way. If they succeed very well, they get a piece of information and bonus currency. But the currency seems like the main thing. If they fail, still give them something. You're rustling around in their satchel, and all you get is a note. You don't really find any money or anything else. And then Noah walks back to the table, or you ask, Noah, do you take a peek at the note when you're safely away? Yes, I do. I'll be bringing new members tomorrow night. So this note was inside of this person's bag. Were they delivering it to someone, or did they get this note? Are they related to the cultists? So you're giving them their moments to shine and tying it into involvement and investment in the story. I love that, Commander Pulsar. That is absolutely perfect. Oh my gosh. And consequences can be fun. If you watch stream shows or even the people that are in your game, there's often someone who's like, what happens? Give me the consequence. How did I fail? I critically failed. Tell me what happens. Do I fall? I played in an Outbreak Undead game. Oh my God. and we were in a situation where there was a toxic fog, and someone's like, I critically failed, and the GM was Ivan Van Norman, and he said to Eric, who was the player, okay, so how do you fail? And Eric's like, you know what, I fall over and my suit tears. And we're like, it was a minor fail, why? But he wanted it. He wanted the chaos. He wanted the consequences. He wanted the dramatic and drastic failure. And that failure led to like someone having to like hold down on his suit to try to keep him from being infected. And it was fun and it was interesting. Oh, it was horrifying, but it was so interesting. Ugh. Imagine a world where it's just imagine a one-shot campaign where the first half of the session is your party just doing anything and everything they want to do. And then you take a break. And the second half of the session is literally just a butterfly effect of everything that happened. Huh. Like, you literally have them running around this world, discovering, experiencing, experimenting. And then you take a little bit of a break. And this could just be a home game. It could literally just be or you're making notes. You're making notes. So right now, all of you are fantasy adventurers. We're going to do another interactive experience because you know that I love those. And that sounded sarcastic, but I actually mean it. You are all fantasy adventurers. This is not in any one system. You can literally describe it any way you want. Tell me what kind of character you are, and then something that your character does. What kind of character you are. You could say that you're a swordsman. You could say that you're a witch, a mage, anything. Tell me what sort of character you are and then something you do. It could literally be about you kill a king to you went shopping and you bought rutabagas. Tell me what character you are. And then let's have a little bit of a butterfly effect game. Let's see what you have. And I'm going to copy these all down. And then I'm just going to sit and go through and we're going to improv a bunch of them. You can come up with as many character ideas as you want. It is not like it's one per person. If one person comes up with like 6 ideas for different characters and things that happened in them, I love it. But put in chat any ideas that you have for that. A character, you can be as descriptive or as like open as you want. And then something that they did. You could have found a magical sword, or you could have just literally kicked a rock. As simple as that. So what do you have? I'm gonna give it a couple minutes. An investigator who specializes in laying spirits to rest. I like it. So what did this investigator do though? Did they lay a spirit to rest, or did they fail in laying one to rest? Did they go looking for one to lay to rest? Give me an action so I can butterfly effect it. Test my GM brain. I'm a dragonborn bard who has stage fright and has just left a tavern after freezing during a performance. That's good. Scribe at a library who witnessed a strange crime. I'm a fan. I'm the newest acrobatic performer with a group that's a circus, but it's really a gang of thieves and mercenaries. Give me at least 3 or 4 more. I know there's plenty of you in this chat. And as I start telling out the things, feel free to bring up anything that comes to mind. You know what? I realized I should come up with one. Let's see. Let's see. I am a librarian who found a book labeled Curse of Todd. Oh, crap. That's going to be about Todd Kenrick. My character is a human wizard named Templeton Fogg. He speaks in a very proper London accent and is fairly gregarious, albeit a bit anxious. You see, he suffers from premature evocation and has a tendency to accidentally set things on fire. He's recently been asked to leave his studies at the College of Magic due to his problem in seeking work in order to continue his studies. Ooh, that's fun. That's a fun one. Oh, maybe the investigator fails to calm a spirit and gets possessed temporarily. Yes. Yes. Carries 4 full water skins. Oh, Templeton. All right. You know what? Give me one more. Ooh. Acrobat is in too deep inside of the warlock patron to give her some magic to hopefully get out of her situation. I like it. Where is that one? I'll work with these few. If you have any ideas, please keep bringing them up, mentioning them, and we'll just butterfly effect them afterwards. So first character for our butterfly effect. A dragonborn bard who has stage fright and has just left a tavern after freezing on a performance. So this is just something that happens randomly in our game. It happened in our game, and it had nothing really to do with the story, but they got nervous and they left. They leave the tavern. But as they're leaving, they hear a voice. They're turning around and they're not sure where the voice is coming from. They look down the alleyway, and there almost seems to be a shadow that was waiting. It was watching in the tavern. It was waiting for the first person to come outside. And that first person to come outside, it could have been any NPC. You literally had plans. You could say that, let's say I had planned that if no one went outside in the next 5 minutes, that the shadow was going to possess somebody else, right? Ooh, cyberpunk settings. I'm writing that one down. And you walk out, and the bard sees this shadow, and they're terrified. They are absolutely, positively terrified. And the shadow looks at them. The shadow looks at them, and it says,
"Hello. I've been waiting for someone to come outside. I've been waiting for someone to be here, someone to play with. Someone that I can give a gift to."
and you're creating a moment where the shadow literally can just tap them. The shadow taps them, and they're swarmed. They're engulfed in this darkness, this shade. And that's it. So that right there, I didn't even have to go deep into what it was. I didn't have to go deep into the story, but it's like the little butterfly effect. So now that this shadow has touched them, this shadow has given them this gift. What happens next? What is the butterfly effect that follows that as it just goes down more and more and more and more? Say it like that. So we have another one. Let's see. We have the scribe at the library who witnessed a strange crime. Now, the scribe witnessed this strange crime, and literally just by seeing it, the people saw the scribe. But the scribe hid. The scribe hid and hid. And you know what, drummer boy, I'm actually going to combine yours with mine. The scribe saw that strange crime, so they ran further into the library and found a book. They found a book that was labeled Curse of Todd because it fell down off of the shelf after they bumped into it, and it opened. And a figure pops out of the book. It's a gnome. And they just look up at the figure. They just look up at the character. That little moment where they saw this crime happen and they run off and they bump into this book and the book falls down and it's the random book Curse of Todd. And now they are cursed with a character named Todd who is now their companion that wants to follow them around but keeps asking obnoxious questions, which, to be honest, is a really terrible situation to be in after you just witnessed a crime. So then it less becomes important about the crime, and now you have this whole side plot with this character. Butterfly effect. I'm the newest acrobatic performer with a group that's a circus, but is really a gang of thieves and mercenaries. And my acrobat is in too deep and sought a warlock patron to give her some magic, to hopefully get out of the situation. So, let's say that your warlock is seeking out this patron, talks to the patron even, and the patron convinces you that there's somebody else. They lie about the deity they are. They lie about where the power is coming from. This person thinks that they're a warlock of fire, but they're actually a warlock of decay, and that's why everything is turning to ash. And they just don't know. That butterfly effect of them looking. I'm good. I'm glad the captioning is good. They're looking for this power and they gain this power, but because your character may have never been like your player, the character in this party that you're jamming for may have never mentioned the warlock thing before, or maybe it was just like an offhand comment, like, you know what, maybe I'll just go look for a patron instead, and someone finds them. And they didn't expect that to happen. They were just saying that as a joke, as an offhand comment, as a little thing. But then it becomes something even bigger. That's true. The captioner does mess up names and say fantasy things instead, and I kind of love it. So an investigator who specializes in laying spirits to rest, and the investigator fails to calm a spirit and gets possessed. That right there, it doesn't even have to be a bad thing. The character gets possessed, and you're sitting here telling the story, and you have this moment. You could send them a private message. You could send them a text. You could send them just any sort of message to have that conversation with them. Hey, question. Do you mind if you actually stay possessed? What? Why? That'd be terrible. Well, if you stay possessed, what if they actually give you sight? So because of getting possessed by this figure, by this ghost, by this entity, that possession actually gives them like sight into the ethereal realm. That sight gives them sight into a different plane of existence, even temporarily. They can manifest it for like 30 seconds, for a minute, for maybe an hour. And it was something entirely unexpected. But it's the idea of like consequences sometimes just being exciting. Because then it's not even about failure. It's about just the consequence. It's exciting. You're sitting here and they're possessed and you're thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Well, actually, I know what you can do, Jared.
What am I going to do? Beelzebub in my head.
Well, actually, I've been here a long time. I've seen what these people do. I know where they live. If you let me stay, I'll take you there.
Okay, you've got a deal. That little butterfly effect moment of they accidentally got possessed, and now it can lead to this little favor. So those random actions that your party does, that the characters do, you can turn them into plot hooks. You can turn them into exciting little moments and make this world real. If he'd never been possessed by this creature, they never would have found out. But because it happened, it was a whole different conversation. Initially, it might have been like, oh, this is dangerous. Oh, we got to get them out. Oh, this is bad. No. I say roll with it. So I've had an idea, Sphinx said, about an adventure involving a sentient spellbook that wants the PCs to help find its original owner, who it hasn't seen in over 1,000 years. So the players have to backtrack through all the previous masters to find them. That's interesting. I had a character who had a mimic eyeball, like one of their eyes was a mimic, and it could telepathically speak to them. And because it also had other abilities, so this creature was actually able to keep an eye out, be aware, watch things as the character was doing something else. And they thought it was going to be a horrible experience, and then they loved it, which was so weird because I could not get rid of it. And it was worth it, but oh my gosh. So let's talk about Thunderspeak's character, Templeton Fog. My character is a human wizard named Templeton Fog. He speaks in a very proper London accent and is fairly gregarious, albeit a bit anxious. You see, he suffers from premature vacation and has the tendency to accidentally set things on fire. He has recently been asked to leave his studies at the College of Magic due to his problems, and is seeking work in order to continue his studies. He carries 4 full water skins. So I think Templeton is just walking down the road and accidentally sets fire to an automaton. And at first it's horrible. Oh my, no, it's terrible, it's terrible, it's terrible. But then the fire seems to compress. And then the automaton's arm moves and it covers its chest as the fire sits inside. And then it lifts its chest up and starts to move and is walking. So this accidental thing of lighting things on fire created this new character, this potential companion, this potential compatriot, just by that accident, that butterfly effect of it coming together. And we have butterfly effect stuff happening in games all the time. It could be a Warforged. Who knows? But that's the question, isn't it? Is this a Warforged? Is this something or someone completely different? Are they similar? And if they're only similar, what makes them different? Take that butterfly effect moment and run with it to create something entirely different. Because the game is set up, you have this story set up. Now what? Now what happens after these people do these actions? Now what happens after the story gets derailed, but you still have a story that you can use? Now what? If they were interested in this thing, but obviously they care more about the little moments that are happening. Now what? So there were a couple more comments. Let's see. I recently grew tired of beat sticks, and so I made a gnomish warlock with 0 offensive spells. No fireball or magic missile sort of situation. Alzawit le Poofnitz Finswick is his name. He befriended an entire plane of existence that was manifesting through a locket. He also befriended some hellhounds temporarily. So much fun. See? I love that. Thunderspeak said, I can't tell you how many times my plots have changed in advance on a different track based on the simplest action that one of them took. I do that a lot. I change it up just because it might be that's what's more interesting to them. And we were talking about it previously for Blair, but it could be that the cultists are actually the small problem. What if the cultists disappeared? What if, and this is not me saying you should do it, Blair. I like the idea that you have of like raising up the direness. It's just an example that I wanted to compare to. But what if the cultists disappeared? What if they stopped? What if something wiped them out? what happened? Did the thing they were trying to bring, or maybe like raise, or that they were hailing or praising, come back and fed on them for power? Are there a rival group of adventurers that actually took them out and were just looking for a challenge? Was there another group that got rid of them with divine intervention and is now seeking other foes? If you're having trouble in the game that you've set up, if you're having trouble in the path that you've taken, if you have ideas that you've already written and you're linked to them and you're dedicated to them, you can still take a quick turn. You're always able to do that. And if you don't want your party to know that you've been changing it, they technically only have to know as much as you want to tell them. They never have to know that this NPC wasn't intended. They never have to know that this town didn't exist until they mentioned it. They never have to know that this forest was made up because someone mentioned they wanted to see greenery. They never have to know that that gigantic lake monster that speaks in jazz saxophone tune wasn't real, and that it was all just because they made that up and they said it in an offhand comment and you liked the idea and you went with it and you stuck with it. And it's actually called Jazzy Bessie, aka Jessie. This sounds very specific, but I was actually just making that all up in my head at this exact moment, and I'm very dedicated to Jesse now. I like Jesse. So there were, yeah, most of my projects started as jokes, and sometimes like the little jokes make things the most fun or the most interesting, or you build up on them, and it becomes easily more amazing than you ever expected. Um, so there were a couple questions that came up, and I wanted to go through those questions now. And the questions can be related to this topic. It can be any like suggestions or things that you need. If you haven't asked a question yet, you can put question in all caps and then type out your question after that, and we'll just go through them one at a time. That way they don't get lost in the chat or anything. But yes, Salty Ginger, which is still so weird to say. Could you bring up the one question? There was one from before. How many characters have you killed and do you feel guilty? I've actually killed less than 10. I know that for a fact. And let me think. I know that I've killed less than 10 player characters. As shocking as that might be for some people because of how I tell stories. I think it's been maybe 5, actually. It's very few. Okay, well, this is a telling question. Does it only count if I was the GM when they died? Does it only count then if they died? I've never played Urban Shadows, but I really want to, and I know that the second edition Kickstarter just launched. What? It's a serious question. I'm wondering if it only counts if I was the GM when they died. If I was only the GM when they died, it's only 5. If I wasn't GM when they died, it's more than 5. uh, and I'll be honest, I didn't feel bad any of those times. Yeah, if it wasn't ooh, actually, I've killed more characters not as a GM than I have as a GM. Oh no, I'm suffering from my actions because of hiccups. Yeah, I think I've actually killed 12 characters as not a GM. And I've killed 5 as a GM. But all of the circumstances where it happened, it like there was always a discussion that it was a possibility to happen. So it's always been a thing of like my character probably wants to try to fight yours or attack yours, or they were defending themselves in some way and then they killed the others. As a GM, I do feel bad a little bit, and it hear me out the whole way. I feel bad a little bit, but whenever it comes up, um, I I do my best to make very clear the danger and possibility of it. I make very clear that this is a situation where your characters will be fairly likely to die. Or we have the conversation and like the trust and understanding that if the creatures do something that's in their behavior or reaction, that it's not me trying to kill them. The death is a product of the conflict with whatever they were going against. And having that conversation ahead of time is what makes it easy for me to like throw the wildest things at them. It's like, okay, this is a dungeon crawl. It's going to be very dangerous. Are you comfortable doing it? And if they're like, yeah, let's do it. Then like that little bit of conversation, it's usually more than just that, but like the back and forth of having that conversation, making sure they're clearly aware of like the danger or frustration or conflict or fear of it, then it's a lot less, okay, I killed these characters. It's more the game killed these characters and that sucks. But we talked about it, and we have ideas. And sometimes I'll be like, okay, this thing is extremely dangerous. They have these spells, they have these abilities that it'll be very tough. Is this what you want to do? And it's like getting that consent that this is where they want to go into it. Out of character, I've killed characters in like agreed arenas, or there was one time that a party made fun of one of my characters when he got scales. So we kept playing like 3 or 4 sessions. And I had like a conversation with him out of character, and I was like, I think he probably hates all of the characters. If there's some PvP, is everyone comfortable with that? And they're like, yeah, sure. So 3 out of 4 of that party died, not counting myself in that number. But that's a side point. You know what? We can talk about character death another day. I'm going to make a note of that. I feel like that's a good topic. Character death. And yeah, I agree. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to make a session where the characters couldn't die, because there's like way worse things. They could be arrested or like in a cursed sleep or injured or lose their memories. Like there's a whole lot of horrible stuff that could happen. Drummer Boy said, Butterfly Effects, how would you work that into the game that have the backstory built into character gen? I would make, so I love charts. I like having pieces of paper, and then I just something that would be very interesting, in my opinion, is make like a list of backgrounds, or take backgrounds that already exist in the game, or a list of backstory points. And this is going to be more work as a GM. I am saying that up front to make it very clear. This would be more work for you as a GM. But after that point, have a separate list for yourself of a bunch of little things that could be byproducts of those choices. Yes, and I'm using, oh, that's fine. Yeah, no, be excited. Be excited about captions. I'm using Web Captioner. It is a free program that you can use. Setting up is very easy. There's tutorials all over, but it's webcaptioner.com. Not sponsored, but I just appreciate that they do this. Make a chart for the character. Make a chart for the different backgrounds and backstories and little things that could be byproducts of it. So say someone picks the like soldier backstory, and if they were a soldier, there was someone that maybe there was someone they failed to kill, or there was someone that they saved, and make like a couple little options for that stuff. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, that question might have inspired me to make something maybe D&D related, maybe as a byproduct to a bunch of different backgrounds that exist, and I might be doing it. And if I do, you're gonna get a shout out, Drummer Boy, for that because I appreciate you. Um, but yeah, I love little charts like that. And then you get the different ideas, you get the different creativity, and then it's like something that they didn't see coming per se. It's I'd make them very loose and open so that the character and the both the character and the player have agency over how it is decided. So like say there is we said the soldier. Say the soldier the butterfly effect of it is that there was someone that they failed to kill in a fight. And leaving that open and making a note about it or describing that in your notes above in the chart or anything. This could be someone that they spared. This could be someone that got away. This could be someone who, after they failed to kill them, actually became different and came here to seek help from this character. This could be someone who came here to seek like vengeance on this character. This could be someone who, I don't know, maybe they fell in love on the battlefield. Like, the options are endless. There's a bunch of different ways that it could be, and you could even include those in your little chart. But when you're trying to come up with like character backstories or any of those things, even if your characters already have backstories and backgrounds and things that have happened, try to figure out little butterfly effect stuff of that. But leave it open so that you could have that moment of, so there was actually someone that, as you were a soldier, you failed to kill them on the battlefield, and you see them in the distance. And then as the GM, you literally say, what was your relationship with that person? That's giving the player and the character the agency to come up with this backstory so that A, you're not giving them something uncomfortable that they wouldn't want. B, you're giving them the ability to like weave this story with you that is about their character. It's not like you're taking total control over it. And that's it usually goes pretty well. And if they tell you, I'm not sure, you take over, then it's giving you the permission to have the agency over that. But offering it to them first is it's like consent. It's giving them the opportunity and the consent to do what they want with their character first, because this is their character they came up with. And if they don't have an idea, if they don't want to come up with it, if they don't feel the motivation to do with it, then they can give you that consent, that comfort, that trust to do with it as you will. But you're giving them the opportunity first. And if you can give a character the opportunity to do something with their backstory, I feel like oftentimes you should. There's the rest of this world that you have to affect and build and create. And giving them the agency and control over that character, I wouldn't say it's like the least you can do, but it's one less thing off of your back that you have to take care of. And then it's not, it avoids that feeling of getting it wrong per se, because it's giving them the opportunity to do it in what they want to be right. I hope that makes sense. I know this was a lot of discussion about things that you can do inside of a game or after a campaign ends or like as a campaign is going or as you're trying to figure out what to do next. There wasn't a single just straight outline of what this was going to be. And some of the shows I know aren't. but that's because it's the conversation, and as all of you say things in chat and as I see things on YouTube, it changes some of what I want to talk about, and it changes some of the stuff that I was like I had my ideas for, because there's no single right way, and as we have the conversations and talk and learn more with each other, it evolves. Like, so Commander Pearlstar even said, honestly, I rarely kill characters irrevocably. Death may be on the table, but it's usually not the worst thing you can do. Sometimes, if you had, I'm gonna talk more about it. The immortal idea. The characters are immortal, and that just means that they will be revived. There is, without giving too much, I have an idea of how the immortality works. I have an idea of restrictions on the immortality. I have a whole bunch of notes on that. I also think that one of the hardest things is going to be if the characters around them die. So the party could be standing and seeing a gigantic fireball coming, and that's fine. But then they all realize that their friendly squirrel companion is in between all of them, and this fireball is surging towards them. Maybe they shield the squirrel from the fireball. Maybe that won't actually work and they can't protect them. There's a whole bunch that has to go into it. But it doesn't mean that the character death has to be the primary aspect of the story. And that's a prime example of the game is set up. Now what? I will often think, okay, I have this story, I have these ideas, I have these notes. How do I get them there? How do I introduce these plot twists? How do I make this world interesting? They're not interested in this thing. How do I bring that back? How do I make them curious? And it's all about bringing that around. There's a whole bunch that goes into it. There's a whole bunch of twists and turns and creative differences, creative choices, creative ideas. But sometimes starting is just the hardest part. If you've never GM'd before and you feel like starting is the hardest part, after you get set up, even if you don't know what to do next sometimes, that's okay. Because you have an entire table of people who want to play a game with you, who want to tell a story with you, who want to create with you. That's why they're at the table. They want to play, do this thing, and have fun. That's the goal. There's always byproducts that involve the fun. Sometimes they're charity games. Sometimes it's playtesting. But almost assuredly, something that you all share is that you want to have fun at this table. And being able to rely on your players, your party, and your actual companions, your teammates, since you're all playing this game together, relying on them for story aspects and ideas and motivations and plot hooks and different things that you want to do. If you get the game set up, if you have all of these notes and ideas, and you get to a point where you're literally asking yourself, now what? Ask them too. You don't have to have all of the answers. It helps if you have a bunch of them, especially when it comes to guiding the story. But you don't have to have every answer. You don't have to have the outcome of what this chemical formula is. You don't necessarily have to have the outcome of what that monster is. And it helps a lot. It helps a lot of the time if you have it, since you're the one largely weaving the story. But you can ask your companions for suggestions. They might decide that you offhandedly mentioned a rumor of a gigantic creature, and they seek that creature out. And then they get to seeing a shadow of the creature. And something that I've done before, and I loved doing it. Because even right here, this show has a lot of interaction with the chat. That's pretty clear. Because you all think of very creative, strange things. You are chaotically creative, as I've said before. But I've had an unknown creature that the party was seeking. And I've said that this thing was very large, massive creature. And then I've literally just asked all 4 characters, what do you think it looks like? I could pick one. I could pick a combination of the 4. I could be inspired by anything that they say. Because you just ask them, what do they think is going to happen? And they don't have to be right, per se. But getting that interaction, then they can be involved, and they're involved in, like, you know what their mind is thinking of. You know what their creative brain is doing. Someone could literally say, I have no idea. That's okay. Some of them might have literally no idea, and that's okay. It's just opening the door for that communication and that team narrative design, that team world building. So previously, on some of the other episodes, we had talked about world building. We had talked about setting the game up today and what happens afterwards. We've talked about a lot on Tabletop Tabletalk, actually. So something that I think I want to do is, because we've been building these worlds, we've been talking about this stuff so much, one of these episodes in the future, we're going to play a one-shot. And I'm going to find some people to stream it with me. And there's going to be, but before we do that, we're going to sit, and in Roll20, we're going to build our world map. We're going to build the world from some of the world building suggestions that we made the other day, with the different biomes, the different weather, the different NPCs, the different locations. And we're going to build that world. And then there's going to be a one-shot that happens in that world. At least one, maybe a couple. And what I'll even do is I will even make a document that links to the description of everything that we created. All of the different NPCs and the different locations, the weather and all that stuff. And here's what's going to happen. You all, when we do this show, when we play through it, you all will know what the world is like. You all will know what the weather is like. You all will know what the biome of this region is like. But I will not let my players have all that information. I'll work with them to create the character, and we will create a general encounter and an experience. But I'm excited to share with all of you all the stuff we've talked about. We might even make it a couple session series, because I've talked about all the different things to do, the session tone, the setup, all of that stuff. But it's also different when you get to see it in execution. So if we can have a couple episodes that are just going through the different execution of the things that we all talked about here. Because it's one thing for me to sit here and talk with all of you about it, and it's another thing for me to actually show you myself doing it with these people. The execution is sometimes just different than the ideas, and when you get the execution, it's more natural. So we can go through an actual session 0 for that world, and then we can have a one-shot in that world, and then we can see, okay, well, you know what, like, what is the stuff that I tie to? I can even talk about, I'll even outline for all of you what my general plan is for that encounter. And then we can see, with the game set up, now what? Do they follow that progression? Do they go off the rails completely somewhere else? This show is meant to make you more comfortable about GMing, to make you more comfortable telling a story, experiencing a story, and being able to take that and run with it. I want you to be comfortable and happy and feel able to do these things. And I feel like talking about it is a great way to do it. But I can also show you. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming up soon. Next week, we're going to actually be using Roll20 a little bit more interactively. We might be playing a game. We might be setting up a world in the game. Actually, you know, so next week we can plan the next tabletop. We can actually plan to do the physical world building of this world map that we created. And yeah, I'll make a document that lists all of the different biomes and stuff we created, all of the different characters, the NPCs, the effects. And then we can figure out where those locations are on this map. We can figure out where we want them to be. We can figure out where the different weather is actually taking place in this world. And we can build it up from the ground up together. thank you for coming and joining me today. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for commenting, and I appreciate the feedback that you give me because this is meant to be interactive and fun and interesting. I want you to feel like you've gotten something out of this, like you have grown as a storyteller, even a little bit, or maybe you got an idea you never considered. And if you're watching on Twitch now, thank you for sitting here with me for this time, for this experience. And honestly, every time I do this, it actually helps me learn more. I think of new things I never considered whenever you all make suggestions, or I think of like creating that world map together and then the one shot or a couple sessions, talking about character death and how there are ways around it. Take the inspiration, take your D10 inspiration die. You are chaotically creative. You can tell amazing stories. If there has ever been a doubt in your mind, you absolutely can. And you might ask yourself, how, Gabe, can you know that for sure if you haven't spoken to me, you haven't met me? Because we're all capable of doing it. Like, we literally all are. We just see some people highlighted in it because they've had the time of day, they've had the experience, they've had the motivation. I can say very confidently myself, I did not think that I could tell stories that people were interested in. I did not think that I could create things that people were interested in. And I'm still having days where I have to remind myself that I can do that. I know that you can too. You are absolutely, positively, and without a doubt, yes, I was stalling because I was looking for a button. I can admit it. You are absolutely, positively, chaotically creative.
And I will see you next time. I almost didn't mute my mic. Good lord, words are hard.